Okay, so everyone knows this week that Donald Trump has threatened to send his secret police, federal forces, but we don't know what they are because they're pulled from every agency. They're unmarked, and I think they sent some to Portland to quell a peaceful protest. So, what does everyone think about this dictatorship secret police that's about to happen here? Let's go with Dre first.
Well, I mean, places like Chicago, New York, other places have a shit ton of gang violence. Democratic leadership hasn't done anything really to quell it. It's a problem. It's an eyesore. On the other, but to do that, you have to probably break civil liberties, and you're going to have basically federal agents getting to what amounts to be little street battles with residents of Chicago, which means you're going to have innocent people caught up in the crossfire. Typically, is how these things go down, and it's going to be a fucking mess on both sides. There's going to be no clear victory in this. They're going to claim it's a crime. It also is a dry run, as people have said, to likely quell the Constitution. And if this action doesn't lead to impeachment, then I think when we get to the November election, that's going to be a bigger problem. And the Democrats, as always, ain't going to do shit and can't do shit to fucking stop it. I mean, this just nothing they're going to do about it. I mean, there's one thing to send federal help. I mean, we've sent federal troops in before. If you go back to Reconstruction, this was done before. But that was to quell rebellion and uprising about newly freed African Americans trying to impose voting rights and things like that. It goes back to George Wallace in the South. I mean, this is not something that the federal government, specifically the executive branch, hasn't done before. It's not completely new territory. It's just now you have the executive branch using these powers for a very, very controversial reason. And as far as getting rid of the gang element that is in Chicago, yeah, on that side of it, I'm not against it. I think the decades of violence you have led to drastic measures that have to be fucking taken. It's a short-term fix. Maybe you do need a bit of a short-term cleanse, because I shouldn't read about fucking teachers getting carjacked by residents that are 11 years old. That's just fucked up in its own right. That should not happen. You've had decades of economic depression, lack of jobs, a shitty school system, and all that shit that leads to crime and all that type of stuff. But at what end? At some point, where is the line where you say enough is enough? You already have a corrupt Chicago Police Department. You have activists who really can't do shit about gang violence. You have residents who don't have access to guns, or make it so impossible for them to get guns to protect themselves. So what options do you have to stop gang violence now? Not 10 years from now, not 20 years from now, next week. What options are realistically on the fucking table? What? The cops seem perfectly either corrupt or content letting blacks kill black folk. Black folks are perfectly fine letting black folk kill black folk. So what's the solution for next week or next month when it comes to gang violence in Chicago? We've marched, we've done prayer vigils, they've done interventions, they've done all that kind of shit, and it's still a problem. So, as fucked up as it is to have to go to his extreme, and especially him doing it as president. This is Obama, I feel a little more comfortable about it. If this was Clinton or shit, even Bush, or fucking even Reagan, as much as it pains me to say that doing this, I think there'd be a little bit more logic to it. I think there'd be more measured. I think maybe it would be more of a covert operation to do that, assuming the intentions were good, but with something that we just never know. But the question remains, and I ask it even to my heavily activist friends who always want to get into a conversation about crime and poverty and all that type of, okay, that's fine and great. You talking 10, 15, 20 years, that's fantastic. How are you going to solve shit this weekend? What's it going to take to fix the shit this weekend? What's that going to take? People shouldn't have to be afraid to walk in their own fucking neighborhood with the people who look like them. What are we going to do to fix that? So, as much as it sucks, it seems like we put him in that situation now to address a problem as shitty as it is with him at the helm. And it's gonna fucking bloodbath though at the end of it. That's all I got to say about that.
Okay. Sean, before you go, I'm going to pose this question, but not to be answered right now. I just want everyone to think about it. If that does happen and they assign troops to Chicago and other cities, what are those troops going to do? How do they stop it? You don't have to answer that right now. I want everyone to talk first, and we'll come back to answer that question. Go ahead, Sean.
So part of the problem is that people are trying to solve a problem that took decades to create in a weekend. That's not how you solve problems that took decades to create. The problem took decades to create. It's going to take at least years, if not a decade or more, to fix it. So, I mean, that's if you actually believe that Trump is deploying federal agents for the reasons that he says he is, which is, of course, not at all true. He doesn't care about Chicago. He doesn't care about the people who live in Chicago. He doesn't care about gang violence in Chicago. What he cares about is two things. One, raising the temperature on the pot just a little bit more without us noticing that we're being boiled in it. And giving real good footage of federal agents stomping on people that his base doesn't like for them to show on Fox News. That's what he's trying to accomplish. It has nothing to do with gang violence in Chicago. That is the thinnest of pretexts, because he's been in office, I don't know, 3.5 years? He's never given a fuck about Chicago until today, yesterday. All of a sudden, there's gang violence in Chicago, and he just noticed it. And now he's got to send hundreds of federal agents to Chicago? No, that's not why. He sent federal agents to Portland, and they beat up on protesters. And that's what he wanted to see. He wanted to see protesters being beat up on. And some vague, violent vandals vandalized the federal courthouse. Violent graffitiers. People who graffiti shit generally aren't that violent because they're graffitiing it. If they were violent, they would have broken windows and doors and flipped over cars. Not just going to spray paint stuff and leave it at that. So that went, by all accounts for him, well enough for him to try and roll this program out to other cities. So he is, at best, using this as some sort of political tool to try and goose his poll numbers. And at worst, he is trying to pre-position these people in the places they'll need to be for him to try and forcibly steal the election in November. And he'll already have these people placed and embedded in cities and entrenched in places where they can go out and try and quell public unrest at his attempt to stay in office against the will of the people. That's what this is really about. It has, again, gang violence in Chicago is the thinnest of pretexts. It's something that people on the right who want to believe in him, it sounds like something that's just enough for them to believe that that's why he's really doing it, and for them to be able to go back and argue with their coworkers and anybody who doesn't agree with him. He's trying to get this gang violence in Chicago under control. It's been raging for decades, and he's the one who's going to do something about it. That's not why. That is not why at all. It's a veneer. And if you scratch it even a little bit, it chips and falls apart completely. So that's my feeling about it. We're all in a lot of trouble if he continues to roll these troops out in these cities, and he's not going after gang violence. If anything, he's going to escalate the level of violence in these cities, which will give him further pretext to roll out more forces into these cities. And before you know it, he's going to have basically an army in every one of these cities, just sort of sitting there waiting to take orders from him. He's also basically trying to figure out who in law enforcement is on his side. When he goes to put that, he's thinking, when I go to put this plan in motion, who am I really going to be able to count? So when I try to send these folks out to Chicago or Baltimore or Philly or any of these places, the ones who balk, I'll know that I can cross them off the list of folks that I can trust. And they may have to be disposed of in one way or another when the shit really hits the fan. But these other folks, they'll do exactly what I want them to do. And a lot of them are Border Patrol people who are already pieces of shit to begin with. And he's just going to try and roll them out. He's taking them from the border, the people who are willing to put kids in cages and just sort of sit there and watch and laugh and do whatever. He's now exporting them to other states and cities because he wants them in position to do whatever heinous act he wants to try and perpetrate on the people when they resoundingly reject him in November.
Yeah. This is like this looks like a setup of how his new dictator secret police are going to be once he loses and still needs to claim to be the winner of this election. So, your thoughts, Hannibal?
Shit. I'm not sure if I could add any value to what Sean has already provided. Like, that is, I don't think there are very many more people who are more articulate than myself. But in sharing that bit of information he articulated that a lot better than I would have. Not as funny, but definitely very clearly. And I can't add. I can't hold him. That was perfect because those are my sentiments exactly. Andre, I definitely understand the feeling behind what you're saying, but again, agreeing with Sean, I do not believe that sending in the SS is the way to solve a generational systemic challenge that blights particular neighborhoods in our largest cities. It's just, that is not the way to go. So you're going to massacre people in order to quote unquote solve a problem. It's like blowing people up to solve terrorism. We see how well that works. It does not work. It creates more terrorists. I'll go to school, I come home, and my whole family's blown up. Yeah, you're not going to be like, thank you, Americans. Now I can't eat. I don't have a place to stay. I might be killed by someone else or taken advantage or raped or whatever. But, you did it for freedom. It's the same concept. So I understand the angst behind enough is enough, right? Especially watching that video in the Bronx, where I don't know if I personally think a lot of these killings are cop induced. That's what my tinfoil tells me. I don't have any proof, but there's a lot of anecdote that indicates that cops are very involved, especially in the cities like Baltimore and Chicago, where the police are exceedingly corrupt, that they have a hand, like all those shootings that happen all of a sudden, and nobody knows. It's not that people are not snitching. Nobody knows who's doing these shootings. Because it's not as though there's a wave of retaliation. Because when it's a retaliatory thing, they know exactly who was doing the shooting. But in a lot of these cases, nobody knows. They just know that this place is violent and somebody shot up something. Even if people wanted to snitch, they couldn't. You know why? Because nobody knows who really shot up the place. I'm not saying that's in all the cases. I'm not even saying that's in most of the cases. I'm saying that to me, I believe there's a significant portion of cases where the state or the city are involved in fomenting this violence, fomenting the perpetuation of basically keeping a community subjugated to poverty and violence. Because there's money in that. There's a pipeline that you can fill. There are jails that there's jails that you can fill. There's communities. That's a way to corral the people to that neighborhood or get rid of them. Either way, it's a win-win for you. So again, I get the angst. I don't agree with the solution. And for finally, first time I think since we've been doing podcasts, I completely agree with someone. I completely agree with your position on this, Sean. That's all I got. Y'all looking like I'm not done. I'm done.
No, that's cool. And like, let's go back to the question that I posed earlier to Dre, since Dre seems to be the only one that's in some form pro troops going into
shoot them niggas up.
I mean, okay, so look, I'm gonna ask the question first to Dre. If you send in your secret police or makeup of federal troops or whatever it is, let's not forget the fact that it's not technically legal. You didn't declare martial law. You didn't consult with the governors or the mayors of these cities, the governors of the states. You are upending a lot of state rights at this point. But let's say you get past all that and you send these troops in. What are they going to do? How do they stop this violence? What's the plan? Because they don't understand, like Sean pointed out, and I'll go into deeper into the issues in Chicago because that's where I'm from. Hannibal can talk about New York, but explain to me, Dre, what do you expect them to do to stop the violence? How do they do this? I think you're on mute, Dre.
What I would like to see, and he's completely incapable of doing it, but what I would like to see, troops there, cops there, DHS, FBI, et cetera, who have access to resources upon resources that they want. You can't trust local PD for obvious reasons. You have tensions of animosity there. I would have to use the weight of the FBI to go through records, inmates, people, houses, locations, known gang affiliations, all that kind of shit. And since Lincoln did suspend habeas corpus and you're going down that path, I would physically have to drag these people out of their fucking homes. And I would have to at least house them and try to separate them. And it's a messy process to do that. But you would have to, because the shit has gotten out of hand. Then after that, you might have to start going after gun deals to try to find out where all these guns are coming from. We got into this last week about people filing serial numbers and guns just magically going missing, all that kind of shit. That's what it would take. But is he going to use these federal officers for what amounts to what should be an intelligence operation? Then once you have the correct information on the correct people, to have the will to do it as necessary and to do it in such a way where you're trying to clean up the streets and also at the same time protect the citizens that are there to have to deal with this shit day in, day out. I'm from the Bronx. I know plenty of people who've been in violent situations, and you can't go to the cops because sometimes they're in on it, or sometimes they're getting paid off, or they're connected to the right drug dealer, and you can't really touch Mookie's crew or nobody in that crew. So at the same time, people are still dying. So what happens when you can't trust the police? Your neighborhood don't protect you. You're not safe. You don't have the financial resources. Just fucking move. So what are people supposed to do? There's nobody come. Do you just declare Chicago, the Bronx, and every fucking place else just a war zone, just write it off, let them to their own devices after we've spent 10, 15, 20 years of marching and protesting to do something? What has that gotten us? All the money you pumped in, all the programs they have tried, all the religious hustler preachers that have been out there trying to hold these vigils and meeting with gangs and trying to get truces and all that shit, none of that shit has worked. To the degree that you needed to. Yeah, it's worked in some small pockets. I will grant that there's been small successes, and yes, it is a generational problem, at least it is. But as of right now, what do those people have? What resources are there to do so they can go to work in the morning and not have to worry about their car getting checked? What resources do they have where they know they can go to the fucking ATM at 9 o'clock at night and not get the shit beat out of them and have all their money taken? What resources there for that? None. The cops either don't care, or they're, like I said, they're in on it, can't trust them, and you already don't feel safe in your neighborhood. So what other options are there? And nobody likes to see sausage getting made. And I don't say it easily because you're breaking civil rights. You're breaking people's privacy. You're undoing their due process. You're undoing so many things. But at some point, there is a body count to all this that piles up. And at some point, you want an omelet, you're going to have to break an egg. So what are we doing that's going to actually fix their lives for the people that are living there now who don't have 5, 10, 15, 20 years to wait till we figure out the magical math tax-wise to fix a generational problem, to fix a jobs problem, to fix a educational problem, to fix a mental health problem? These are solutions that those are, again, years from now. You can't fix those now. You have the here and the now. And right now, people need help. Right now, people need to be protected. Right now, shit has to be done. Nobody ever seems to want to look at it from that side. They just want to keep kicking it down the road, and that has yielded no results.
No, okay, hold on. You're right. I agree with you. Things have to be done differently to a point. But back to the original question: what do troops do specifically? You put troops on the ground, whatever these troops are. What are their limitations? How far can they go? What do they do? And you said something a little earlier. how do they differentiate between who's a problem and who isn't? You didn't actually say that. You don't know from paperwork and file because they're random people on the street. I'm saying right now, you can't tell who's who in Chicago.
No, which is why I said it would have to be, again, it'd have to be an intelligence operation. The minimum you're going to have troops do is you want to have a show of force. You want them likely patrolling the streets at night to at least strike some sense of fear into the people that are out there. So do I think that they're going to be a magical fix? No. Do I think it's a better solution than what's been going up to this point? Yes. So if I had to have, I don't know, squads walking, let's say every block, I got 2 soldiers there. They have M16, they have M4 carbines. We have Humvees rolling down the fucking block in the middle of the street. Is gang violence just going to magically stop at all pockets of the city? No, I'm a realist. At the same time, is that going to at least give them a moment of fucking pause to think about it? Do you want to really get into a shootout with potentially troops, trained killers, professional killers? Do you really want to get into that?
I mean, it works so well in Iraq. I mean, think about it.
Iraq is another. I get Iraq, and I get that side of it. But at the same time, when it's on you,
hold up, but you had the full amount of the military.
Well, we didn't properly disband the Iraqi army. But that made it a whole nother fucking.
You had insurgencies. Hold up, but you had insurgencies that stood up to that same military force that you're saying you're going to put into a city that's more armed, more people, and I feel like, hey, wait a minute, I got rights, and you're coming in my city. Trust me, that's my city. Yep. I know what they're going to do. They're not going to be scared of the troops. They don't give a damn. You put troops in there, it's just going to be more gunfights.
And on top of that, you have to think about this. They're not foreigners. They're not these brown, savage foreigners. You have to consider these are people, a lot of those people in the Border Patrol, they're from poor, disabled backgrounds. Yeah. They're not the most super educated people on the planet either, which is why they do their job so poorly. So you have to consider this is their family. This is family, friends
to
that they're doing this to.
Yeah, to some of them, yeah. But
you have another issue on that front as well. And then if people are getting outrage, worldwide outrage, over someone having their a knee on someone's neck.
Yeah.
Imagine when the first person gets shot.
Yeah.
Innocent family member who's mistaken for a criminal or who didn't follow an order that was unlawful, gets shot down in the streets by one of these morons. What the hell do you think is going to happen then?
You're going to have the same crap you have now. You're going to have protests. People go ride the streets, and they're going to tear down more statues, and they're going to destroy more fucking property. What do you think is going to happen?
Fuck that property. But
it's going to happen. But you asked me what's going to happen
about that property.
You asked me what's going to happen, but you asked me what's going to happen. But they still going to do it. But they still going to do it. Okay, fine.
About people are going to die. And you know what?
Okay,
people are going to be fucking marching. People are going to be fucking marching. People are going to come out armed. You know how they roll up on the state capitals? Fucking cosplaying? Niggas are going to come out fucking shooting. And I'm not talking about black people. I'm talking about white, black, everybody.
Anybody come out and
start busting shots.
Like they're right.
Because when you have an invading, occupying force against lawful citizens, what was the stat that you had? It was 0.00016% of the population that's causing the bullshit.
And you what about the
99.999 84% of the motherfuckers who are law-abiding citizens?
Yeah, and then you also got the flip side of that too, right? What if some of those citizens feel that they want the federal troops there? They might not say it. But if you got to,
Drake, hold on. I want Sean to talk too. Hang on, Drake. First of all, you're right. There are going to be people that do want the troops there until the troops get there. The problem is that once troops are there, who's person A, who's person B, who's person C? No one knows. You can't tell who's who unless you see a person committing a crime in that moment. You're not going to know every black male is now a threat, even more so than they ever were, and you're going to shoot them because they're black. Every person. What's going to happen is now the occupied city is going to feel trapped. They're going to say, hey, I don't have my rights. We're American. Once you take away our rights, something that we have, we're going to be against that. You're going to create a civil war inside of an American city against the American government at that point.
I would say that they're trapped now. What difference does it make? When
No,
I mean,
you're not trapped now. No, trust me. You're talking about my hometown. Listen, you're not trapped now.
Right. You left New York. I left New York. He left Chicago.
because it's
Don't
a shithole.
use that bullshit about
But
being
we're not trapped because I go back.
You
We
know
all
what
go
I'm
back.
saying.
We all go. Listen, we all go
fucking
back.
We all could, but we all could afford to leave too.
Hold
Not
on,
everybody
hold on.
can.
We still got family there that live there because they want to and they can afford to leave. The point is that what you see in Chicago on television is a snapshot. That doesn't mean that, yeah, there are shootings. Yeah, there are killings. The entire city is not a war zone. The entire city is not under siege. That is bullshit. That is what they want you to believe. It is not like that.
Was.
The point
But you
is
do
that you
have to
cannot,
stand on
but you
that's a
cannot
problem.
occupy that city with troops. Is what we're saying. So let's get to Sean's point because I know we monopolize. Go ahead, Sean.
So I think we're missing a couple things here. One, the people he's sending aren't actually soldiers.
Thank you.
He said federal agents. So this is not the military, right?
And the worst, poorly trained,
They're the Coast
bullshit
Guard.
dumbass.
They're the federal marshals.
Right. They're people who have no skills to do what you would want these people to do.
Guerrilla
They're
warfare,
not-
basically.
Yeah, they're not trained in urban warfare. They're federal agents. So you're basically trying to send more cops to a community that is already over-policed, right? So we've seen that poor black communities garner far more attention from police. So they're already over-policed, and that doesn't help the violence being over-policed, right? They have a significant police presence. They have police there arresting people every day, and yet they still have crime every day. So I've never seen a situation where more police presence or an occupying force actually improves anyone's life. All it's going to do is make the people's lives who live there even worse than they are now. I would submit to you that after anywhere from 2 to 3 months of these extra people being there, everyone who lives there would go, you know what? I wish we could go back to the way it was before these assholes got here, because now it's worse. Now there are armed troops on the corner. I can't go to the store without feeling like I'm going to get harassed or get shot, because that's what these people will do. They will harass the people who live there. They will make their lives tangibly worse and probably not do anything to reduce the violence that's there.
They'll create
That's
more.
what we can do.
Maybe.
Look, the problem.
All I'm saying ain't nothing. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, even if we agree that it's a bad strategy, just like I said at the start of my answer, this is more of an intelligence operation, which what it should be. But he doesn't have the sophistication to even come up with that kind of plan. This is clearly for political reasons. This is a test run to usurp the Constitution. Again, if this was Obama, this would be an entirely different operation, even if he wanted to use federal troops. There'd be actual intelligence behind it, and you could actually do it. I don't trust him doing this.
You're right. Trump
If
is
it
not
was
the guy.
Obama, you would never know that it's happening.
Yeah, and you're right. Trump isn't the guy to do this. But first things first. If you're a doctor and someone's coming in and they've got a couple different symptoms and you don't know what's going on, you have to figure out what the problem is before you can treat them.
Sure.
Okay, so let's treat the same thing with Chicago. Let's use Chicago for an example once again. What's the problem in Chicago, Dre? How did it get to this point?
Poverty, lack of jobs, shitty education, inferior diet, industries leaving, white flight. I mean, it's a very segmented problem. You can point to multiple things that cause it. I mean, it's the same problems you have in the Bronx.
I'll give you one thing: drugs.
Okay. Yep.
That too.
Drugs.
I'll
The
give you
problem.
another
The
thing.
problem. The problem. The
Redlining.
biggest. The
Redlining
redlining
automatically steals wealth from the community.
Yes, but the war on drugs is the principal reason that you have so much violence in these communities, because when you sell drugs in this community, you can make a lot of money because there's a war on drugs. The value of the drugs that they're selling goes way up. What do they do with all this money that they make? They buy weapons to protect the territory that they have to sell drugs. Most of the drug-related violence is territorial disputes, right? These gangs are fighting over territory to sell drugs, which makes them a lot of money, which they use to buy weapons, right? Gangs are not a new thing. The thing that's different is gangs started to sell drugs, so now they can afford to buy lots of nice, shiny guns to shoot each other with. That's the biggest problem. If you take away the war on drugs, you will cut the legs out of one of the principal revenue streams for criminal organizations in this country, which includes gangs. So just legalize the drugs, or at least decriminalize the drugs, to bring the value of what they're selling way, way down, and they won't have nearly as much money to bribe cops or judges or any other, public official.
Or
They won't have as much money to buy weapons.
in the first place.
Huh?
Or be incentivized to do the crimes in the first place, because
Exactly.
it wouldn't
There'll be
a crime
less, right. There'll be less incentive to do those crimes in the first place. Like the root of virtually all of the problems, like in violence in these communities, can be traced either directly or indirectly to the drug trade.
Yeah.
So you want to know what you can do to stop it tomorrow? Stop the war on drugs.
And that's a big part. But let's go back even further. Now, Chicago is going to be a little bit different than, let's say, New York, because there was a time when New York, Giuliani, and after that, statistically was a much safer city.
Yes.
All right, but Chicago's a different animal. First of all, it's in the most politically corrupt state in the country, Illinois. All right. To show you, I think 3 of the last 5 governors have served time in jail for racketeering after their term was over. Blagojevich just got released. So Chicago, Illinois as a whole has had a problem since even before probably Prohibition times, even before that, from the 20s and 30s.
Yeah, it's culture.
The politics in Chicago and in Illinois have been corrupt for damn near 100 years. The laws and layers that have been put in place to make the people at the top and the politicians get money is a problem. All the way down into the city of Chicago, even the aldermen control licensing and businesses in the neighborhoods, and they got to get a payout. That's one of the things that Mayor Lightfoot's come in. First thing she did was try to get the aldermen's power away from them so she can stop that corruption at that level. It's a lot of issues. Chicago is not something that can be fixed overnight and not by one thing. And it's definitely not going to be helped by troops. Drugs are a big deal. It was when it was alcohol in the Capone time in Dillinger. It's drugs now. Another thing they did in the 90s, the federal troops, the marshals and the DEA came in and they decapitated the 5 main gangs in Chicago, the leadership of those gangs. 5 main gangs had territories and controlled it, but you took the leadership out. And now you have over 60 to 70 smaller gangs that are not organized.
Yeah, they made it worse.
And they're worse because there are no rules anymore. Just like the mob operates under rules, the organized gangs operate so rules. I'm not saying that was a good thing, but it kept certain things in check. Like what happened yesterday. What happened yesterday? It was a shootout in front of a funeral or by a funeral home. I'm not sure if the person was a gang member. I don't know what's going on with that. No details yet. But there was rules that you didn't shoot during a funeral, even if it was a rival gang person's funeral. That was just a rule. It was an honor thing. You didn't shoot across a park if the children were around. There were certain things that didn't happen because there were rules. That's gone now.
Yep.
But I'm just saying, I'm giving you one example to say federal troops not going to solve that. Federal troops is not going to solve.
No, they're not. They're not a magic solution. I understand that. I'm tired of reading about Chicago. I'm tired of reading about the Bronx and just innocent people getting killed in the bullshit. And I'm just saying this because I'm tired of seeing them die. I'm tired of seeing us killing motherfucking us all the goddamn time. And I know it's like less than half of 1% of the fucking problem, but that half of the 1% is making life goddamn miserable. Every fucking black person out there who goes to work and works hard every fucking time because we have to keep dealing with their goddamn stereotypes. They're part and parcel of the fucking reason why we over police now. They're part of it. As much as I understand the root cause of these things, at some point you have to cleanse the field of the niggas who are in the way.
But how do you find them? How do you find them? That's the problem.
But my solution, because I damn sure don't trust Trump with this shit, you would have to have a massive intelligence gathering operation to specifically identify those people. And yes, you would have to legalize drug trade, assuming other local politicians go along with it, because now you're cutting into their money. So that would be its own investigation, but that would certainly be part of it. You have to change the structure of how you fund public schools. Tying that shit to property taxes is insanely stupid, because if you have a poor, depressed area, schools ain't getting any of that tax revenue. So they don't have much funds to work with because the residents are poor, which means the properties are poor, so schools don't get jack shit. You have to improve the healthcare system. You have to improve job locations. You have to have businesses actually come and provide jobs, and jobs that actually pay money. So again, drugs are not lucrative, and then you have to make other crimes not as financially lucrative. So there's multiple solutions to it, but just the gangs specifically, you're talking about a massive, damn near 5 minimum to 10, maybe 15-year intelligence gathering operation, slowly picking off gang members one by one by one by one, and just housing them in jail, and maybe long periods of probation, and in some cases rehabilitation, if you can even do that. There are probably some you will never be able to convert. Those, maybe it's a death penalty, maybe it's not, but certainly they can't go back to where they were, because the end goal, as I see it, you have to protect the good people that are there at the end of the day. And how we've tried to get there is it's taking too long. And I'm tired of reading about school teacher killed in her driveway, mom raped on the way to. I'm tired of reading that shit.
We all are. We all are. But the troops do not bring that solution any closer. They just make it work. They exacerbate the situation for what it is. You put troops there. Any one of my 3 nephews could be looked at as, oh, they're a gangbanger and get shot. Just like a cop, they're black and they're a suspect. It doesn't help. It doesn't help. The problem is that you put troops there today. Trump wants to put troops there this week. Okay, fine. What do they do when they get there? How do they differentiate between who's a law-abiding citizen and who isn't? Because unless they're witnessing a crime in action, how do they know the difference? What kind of range of laws are they going to operate in, if any at all? How do you say?
You would have to likely suspend the Constitution, and you would have to literally ask every citizen for their paper and run them against probably CIS. I know you can't, but you can't. But this is what you would have to do. If, assuming we're just throwing all the rules out for the Constitution and all that other shit, you would have to do that person by person to do it, and you'd have to do it within. You'd have to have a perimeter. These people, this, that, and you'd have to go down the list and go down the line, do it one by one. That's what you would have to do. That's not going to happen.
This is a real good time to remind everybody that once you give a right away, you never get it back.
You never get it back.
The government never gives power back that it has taken. Not ever. So
see Captain America, Winter Soldier, Rise of Hydra. See what they did. The reference of Hydra explained exactly how that
movie was genius.
It was. It explained
my
our
favorite Marvel Universe movie.
We definitely gonna come at you. You're black, so your answer is Black Panther. You're supposed to say that.
Listen, I'm just saying.
Nah, it was Winter Soldier. Black Panther was not in my top 5.
But Winter Soldier explained perfectly what happens to giving up rights or losing rights or being scared into giving up your rights. Since the Patriot Act or something like that. It doesn't work. The troops are the problem. I get that you want to see an immediate improvement to say, look, I'm tired of watching random people get shot or innocent people die or random people get shot in a shootout there or not even being safe walking home from school or walking to the store. I get that. Trust me, it's my hometown. I worry about my people all the time. I hate that. It's like that. I get it. But even that being said, I know that sending troops, federal troops, who aren't really military, who aren't the police, who are ambiguous about what their job will be and the limitations of their law, what they're going to be able to do, is not the answer. It's going to make it 10 times worse, if not even 100 times worse. And then on top of that, everyone there has guns. It's like the gun control debate. Oh, well, school shootings, arm the teachers. That's not going to fix it. Adding troops to the cities like Chicago or Philadelphia or New York, you're just going to make a problem worse. And you're going to declare martial law on American cities because the president doesn't like it. Like, this is every apocalyptic movie that we've ever seen come to life. It doesn't end well. It never does. Just because you're frustrated, and we all are. I'm just saying that this is not the solution.
Well, something has to fucking give and something has to work. And another speech from local politicians, regardless of the state, and I can say this about New York City because that's where I'm from, it's like, that don't do shit. And the solutions that they're coming up with, again, I see long-term solutions. I see long-term hope in that. But we still have too high a body count in our own communities with our own black people. And we not even demonstrate Black Lives Matter to fucking us. And that's goddamn sad and fucking pathetic. At this point in time, we got the whole world saying Black Lives Matter. And how the fuck we look at that shit like it don't even matter to us. And what's our answer? That just says, well, we can't do this, we can't, that's too extreme. Even though that opens up a huge Pandora's box of problems and a slippery slope to a lot of shit constitutionally. And it's still going on, but there's nothing we can do. It has to end. It has to end. And Black Lives Matter, I'm sorry, has brought this question out with their messaging and their slogan. You cannot say that and just ignore the 500-pound gorilla about Black Lives Matter and then black on black crime. As much as that's a fucked up misnomer, it even pains me to even have to fucking say that. They get to beat us over the head with that politically every single time we say it. Every time we use the hashtag, every street we paint with Black Lives Matter on it, they get to beat us over the head politically. But what are y'all doing about black on black crime?
No, they don't.
No,
They
there's
can.
no such- yeah,
They
there's
can't.
no-
Again, I understand that, but it comes up.
That's a garbage argument to even.
But it comes up,
Correct.
and they get to do it.
It comes up,
And it's,
but it's
it's not
garbage.
even, but it's not even for us. But those dog whistles ain't for us. That's not for us. That's for their
garbage.
base.
Look, it's a garbage argument because the only group to ever say black something on something crime is black people, right? There's white on white crime. There's
I've said just what I want.
saying there's Latino on Latino crime. Nobody ever says any of that shit. It's black on black crime. It's a fucking trope.
I understand
There's
that,
no-
but you don't.
because
But right now, but we
the
the ones with the hashtag.
the
right
violence in the cities again happens by such is done by such a small, minuscule portion of the population that to somehow say that because there are urban centers where there's a lot of crime and the people who live there happen to be black, that somehow black people, Black Lives Matter and black people don't value black lives. That's certainly not true. So you have
I know it's
Sean,
not true, but people
Sean,
don't make.
black
But
people
people,
on the board.
but people don't
Black
make
people-
distinctions like that. Is my point. That are
Black
not
people
black.
are the board that live on Lakeshore Drive, and we all live on one street in Chicago, and we all share the same brain.
I'm
I
simply
grew up
saying
I grew up
politically.
on Lakeshore
no
Drive.
individual
I grew up on
agency.
Lakeshore Drive. Just saying.
I'm simply saying
We
have
politically.
no
It
agency.
hurts us.
We have
We
no
should-
thoughts, and even if a tiny, minuscule percent of any one of us does anything, we are all to blame. And you know what
Aren't
the
we?
worst?
That's
Do you
how
know
we
what
get
the worst
stereotyped.
crime? You know what the worst fucking thing that happens is when we start believing what other people are saying about us.
Exactly.
When we start believing that we're the fucking Borg, then that's when you get your fucking Cunye's and who the conservative bullshit ass twins and that bullshit sheriff that got fired because he's a piece of shit.
Yep.
And the fucking Candace bullshit hoe ass Owens. That's when you get those motherfuckers on a platform. And you know what? I applaud them because they can exploit both sides. They make money off the people who want to believe it on both sides. I hate them for it, but I can't knock their hustle. What we have to do is to not fall for that shit. Now, with that, that's not saying that the black community proportionally does not have these severe issues. It's not excusing that. But to use that minuscule population that does cause these problems as the flag bearers for our community is ridiculous.
They're not the flag bearers, but they again, like I said, politically, how this plays outside of black people, outside of that 40-some-odd million of us, they watch the news, they read the paper. That's how black people are.
Listen,
they do not.
if
They
can grab
do not,
pussies and still get elected because motherfuckers don't care.
But
We need to
white
roll
folks,
like that.
I'm just, but when,
We
but
need
when,
to
but
roll
when,
like that because we
when
care so much. We allow that. We allow other people to dictate what we think about ourselves.
I'm not talking about what we think about ourselves.
And the thing is,
well,
what happens?
I'm talking about how it plays
is
to
that we
other
get
groups that are
distracted
not
from
black.
the goal. We get distracted from a goal of being better people and rising. Like you know how I always say, that's why we can't rise as a people. This is fucking one of the reasons why. Because
then why are we okay? Let me ask this question. Then why are we as black people, since we understand these distinctions, as you're suggesting, since we clearly know black on black crime is a misnomer, black on black crime is bullshit, black on black crime arises from all these other problems. What are we going to do to basically flush out the nigger elements in the black community? And so we can showcase that, yeah, this small 0.5% fucking bullshit you guys are all scared of, worried about, and used to label all of us, which they do. If you're not in the black circle, Asians do it, the Jewish people do it, lots of white people do it. It's just how it goes as far as our representation, so to speak, to other racial groups in America. Let's not actually fucking pretend that black people historically in America that they don't use our worst elements to be our spokesperson. That's what I'm talking about. How other people see it, not black people. How other groups see it.
Look, here's the problem with what you're saying. Right? Every group of people, everywhere in the world, has a bunch of assholes that they're not proud of. Every single one. You can't flush them out because that's part of being a human being. Is there's going to be people who are associated with you
there's
in
going to be
some
triad,
way
there's going to
that
be
you
mob.
don't like.
But we get it the worst as far as the other.
I understand that.
The stereotypes, though. That's why it's a bigger issue for us. If it was the same,
the way you fix that is not by trying to somehow get rid of these people or weed them out. The way you try and fix that is by actually changing the attitudes of the people who hold those opinions. Because if you don't change the attitudes of the people who hold those opinions, you'll never be able to get rid of enough niggas from the community for them to feel differently. Because they want to feel that way, and they'll pick anyone who reflects poorly on black people as a whole and hold them up as representing the entire group. The problem is not the small minority of black people who are doing this shit. The problem is the people who take that small minority and hold them up as an example of this is what all black people are like. So you're talking about a different problem. You cannot excise all of the assholes from any group. It just can't be done. Because new assholes are born every day, right? They're born every day. They're made daily. You can't get rid of them all. You just can't. All you can do
and everybody's an asshole depending on what day you catch them on.
That's true too. But in this case, I'm talking about the ones who give black people a bad name.
We're talking about the ones when the news reporter is on the street at a crime scene or whatever, he goes to the most ignorant black person he can find.
Yes.
And lets him talk. Now, is that the black culture as a whole's problem, or is it because the white person decided, hey, I'm gonna find the most ignorant black person I could possibly find and put a microphone and a camera in front of him?
Exactly. That is the reporter's problem.
But we let his ass talk. We said it there.
No, we didn't. We let him talk. He was kicking people out.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean.
No.
The whole group of blacks.
No. It's no different. It's no different when you go to some ignorant ass Trump rally and you see some backwards redneck who's probably married to his cousin that knows 5 words in the English language, and he says the most ignorant shit possible. And it's not because white people let him talk; it's because he was there and they found him because they know that.
Maybe we need to step. Okay, look, Pookie, you sit this one out. I got this one. Sometimes you have to step in for your brother that don't know what the hell he's doing.
No, they'll find Pookie when he's off by himself,
right,
minding his own business, and they'll stick a microphone in his face.
Exactly.
It's not that there's a whole line of people and they said we want to talk to that guy and nobody stepped up and said you don't want to talk to that guy. It's because they looked around and said these people all look like they actually have something intelligent to say. Ooh, wait, look at that one. That one looks like a fucking moron. Let's go stick a microphone in his face and see what he has to say. But because white people don't get judged as a group based on the actions of a few individuals,
right?
It doesn't matter to them. But
right, that's what we do.
All the other minorities,
like I said, black people are the Borg to those other groups.
Exactly.
Different rules.
But
the rules are the things.
That's what I think for us is more important because we do get put under a much larger microscope.
But unlike other groups of humans, we can't transcend human nature.
Correct.
Like those, like Sean said, those group of people will always exist. Irish went through it. Italians went through it. Spanish have gone. Like all of these
Italians are still
our shit still continues.
Do you know how those groups became white?
Aside from the obvious.
Exactly. It's part of the obvious. Like they were able to conform, quote unquote conform, but they have a disposition, physical disposition, because they're Caucasian, that allows them to do that. And there are many articles on how come the Irish don't look like Irish anymore, and how come the Scottish and the Portuguese and all these other Caucasians
they mixed in, blended now.
Correct. But we cannot do that.
So we need skin bleaching cream Cream, and they just change our names. That's it.
No, just everyone just intermix until 3 generations from now we're just mutts. How about that?
So reparations for the black community will just be white women, and we'll just flush it out. We'll just flush it all out.
I like black people.
See, you gonna make us look bad. See, you're not gonna do your part. You're gonna be a problem. There's gonna be a problem. You know, you get 40 acres of meal for 400 grand and 3 white women. You're gonna have to do your duty. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay.
Maybe as a second wife. I'll do it.
Okay, hold on. We're a little off here, but let's get back to this whole troops in these.
Funny.
I know it is, but let's get back to these troops in the city. Let's wrap this up real quick. So, I think 3 of us here at least agree that troops added to these cities is not the solution. It's going to exacerbate the problem. Correct? And I think Dre, you're on your own on that one, aren't you?
That's fine.
So to summarize, you're saying put troops down there and let them scare the hell out of people or shoot the hell out of people or whatever the case may be because it's not working.
Nothing's worked so far. So what more can it hurt? The worst case scenario is a shootout, right? Which that goes on as it is now.
Worst case scenario, there's an insurgency and the whole city collapse.
I would say that you have that now, people being scared of it, but that's another story.
Listen,
it'll be Baghdad. It'll be worse than Baghdad.
Hold on.
I don't know about that one. I don't know about that extreme either. But
there is nothing that's going on today that's even close in magnitude or scale to the 90s crack epidemic. Nothing, not a goddamn thing. Chicago, New York, or anywhere else. And I'm talking about there's a 2/3 reduction in all kinds of crimes since the 90s. So if you're talking about putting troops in now and you didn't put in troops in back then, and all the reforms and the cops and the 3 strikes didn't work, you think by putting an occupying force in there is going to help? Other people who typically wouldn't care about black people would be like, wait a minute, just like with George Floyd. There's a lot of white people who didn't give a good goddamn about black people, but when they saw that video, they're like, oh, hell no. Even the niggas I hate, I will not allow that to happen to them.
And how long is that all that love and affection going to last?
Well, it's lasted longer than
hold on. It's not the point of how long it's going to last. The point is that there's a reason why you don't see bodies in Iraq and Afghanistan. Why you don't see what the military does when the civilians
Vietnam.
Because when it's visual, when the American citizens see it. I'm saying as a whole, it's not broadcasted on the news. But when the American citizens see it, when they see it, it changes their perspective. It upsets them. Things change. That's the reason why they shield it. They've never seen it. But when they see stuff,
we've seen enough fucked up video from Iraq and Afghanistan.
No, I'm talking about daily. I'm talking about on the screen daily, graphically. They don't see.
The Defense Department learned its lesson in Vietnam when they let all those reporters go over there and embed with the troops, and the American people were able to see what was happening in Vietnam firsthand, live on TV. It turned sentiment against the war almost immediately. That's why you've had, troops in Afghanistan for 18 years. That's why you have troops deployed all over the world. And there hasn't ever been the level of resentment against the war in Afghanistan there was against the war in Vietnam, because you don't get to see what happens on the battlefield. They had soldiers they had reporters in combat with soldiers. People could see what was happening. And they were like, fuck that shit. Bring these boys back home. They're not going to let any reporter anywhere near the front lines in any theater of war that America is currently engaged in, because they know that's exactly what happened. What would happen? People would see it. They'd be like, no.
You got to see. You guys propaganda, military propaganda. You want to make sure that your military. You want to make sure that no one sees it. You don't want to turn support away from the military, which is like you said, what happened in Vietnam. So you're not going to see that if you put troops on a city in Chicago, in New York, in Philadelphia, in any city, and they start shooting American citizens randomly or occupying that city in any way, making it like it's a war zone in a third world country. Yeah. American sentiment will turn against the United States government fast. Well, as fast as white racists saw George Floyd being killed slowly for 9 minutes. It's gonna happen. Look, so you can't do this.
Look at all the hell they're catching just for breaking that Navy vet's hand.
Yeah, or the old man,
why are you here? And they beat the shit out of him.
Or the old white man, who walked up to the police and they pushed his ass down and busted his head. Like the point is that you show that people don't give a damn when they don't see it and they can't see it. They hear it and they're like, I don't give a shit. But if you see it and it's visual and it's graphic, It affects you. It pulls at the heartstrings. Even if you're a racist, even if you don't give a fuck, you're like, I don't want to see that. It does change. It changes
okay,
some people's mind.
But using that logic, but using that logic though, but using that logic though, let's assume you got, obviously you're going to get troops in Chicago and federal agents. That's going to happen. This Trump is no luck. If people see that, and when people see that, because obviously they're not going to be able to get rid of all of the media that is in Chicago, then couldn't that help further bring down the Trump administration, because they won't be able to turn away from it. I mean, you got that part of the country still even shutting down even worse than the East Coast. So people be home, they'll be forced to see it. They'll be forced to see, which might amount to a lot of mistreatment, which will amount to cops on the streets and looking like an occupied zone. Maybe you do get more of an uprising now by him doing that, therefore leading to his very demise even further. Is that not a possibility?
I mean,
that
great.
price is too high.
Great, but that's what I would say. The price is too high. While you're doing that, you've destroyed a city. You've destroyed the people in that city. You've taken away the rights of the citizens in that city. It's not worth it. And it's not going to fix the problem that you said it was a big deal in the first place. So all you did was create more shit. That's the issue. You had shit and you created different types of shit. That's all it is now.
The governor and the mayor, the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago, would be better served just telling all of these federal agents who come into Illinois that if you come into Illinois and you operate without our blessing, we're going to arrest you and expel you from the state. Right. That would be a better outcome for the people of Chicago and have a much more devastating effect against Trump, because that makes him look weak and ineffective. That Illinois would be able to just go, no, we don't recognize your authority to send these people here to police our streets for us. We're sending them back home.
And let's not forget the governor does have control of the National Guard.
Correct. So they could be met with real National Guard troops. The Illinois National Guard could be deployed to stop these people from entering Chicago. Right. And if they enter Chicago and try and set up operations, the National Guard could be deployed to escort them out of the state of Illinois, which would be far worse for Trump than anything that could possibly happen if those troops were allowed to stay, those agents were allowed to stay and operate in the city of Chicago. Because he wouldn't get his photo op and his television footage on Fox News to try and pump up his base and make it look like he's a real tough guy. If they send all those troops away before they can actually do anything, then Trump gets sent home with his tail between his legs, and he gets nothing. That would be far more devastating to him.
That's right.
Politically, yes, but then, like I said, my only concern is the people that live there. That's my only concern. That's my only concern with this, be it Chicago, be it Bronx, be it Brooklyn, be it parts of Virginia. At some point, shit's gotta go.
If the politicians who are in charge in Illinois thought that the problem was just simply one of sending more or better armed people to those parts of Chicago, then the governor could have deployed the National Guard to Chicago. They don't need federal agents to do it. They have a National Guard who is allowed to operate in Illinois. They could actually send the National Guard troops into Chicago, into these neighborhoods, if they thought that was going to help.
And they have U.S. military equipment. They're full U.S. military equipment.
They'll have better equipment than these federal agents that Trump is sending, because they are a full military force. Right? These are people who get called up and deployed into theaters of war all the time.
Sure.
So if they thought that was the answer, they would do that. But clearly, the people who are there don't think that would be a judicious use of resources. They just don't. They think this is only going to make things worse. So they don't do it.
Either that or they don't care enough to do it.
I mean, I suppose you could make that argument. But if you could be the governor who cleaned up crime in Chicago, you would do it. Yeah. Right? Because that's good for your political fortunes. Whether you care about the people who live there or not. If you could be the person who cleaned up Chicago with the National Guard, and you could run.
Oh yeah, you're a hero. You're a national hero. You're a national hero. Oh,
but you can't. But it's not going to work, because there's two people with guns who don't give a fuck about what your uniform is.
Everybody got guns there.
Who will bust a tap in your ass for being in the wrong place.
Which ironically enough is what all the pro-gun people want. Everyone in Chicago has guns now. So
exactly. And
But
so,
but it doesn't solve crime. It doesn't.
And they're
mean
not,
less-
and they're not registered, so they love that even better.
Right, and I think that's the perfect experiment of more guns doesn't mean less crime. Everyone, it's not a
Well,
deterrent.
more guns in the hands of the correct people, but that's another.
Well, again, you adding layers to it. We're just saying what they say. Everyone has a
Yeah.
gun now. It's the whole
Yeah.
West. Everyone has a gun. What do you have? A shootout. Everywhere is a freaking shootout. There you go.
mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we're gonna see what happens. So far, no troops in any cities. By next week, who knows? We'll probably be talking about this crap again. So, all right,
Unless they distract Trump with some kind of shiny object, maybe he forgets about it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot. Good discussion.